cut up nicely. And at least I guess I'm supposed to make sure that every one of these is coated with some nice olive oil. See, that should be pretty good. Bought this special little brush. Last time I just put them in a bag and shook them, but thought the brush would work better. And then, of course, the recipe calls for some nice sea salt. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to then put them, I think that should be good enough. I hope it's not too salty. We'll see about that. Let's see. And I've had it on broil, and we just put this in here. Yeah, I have it in the middle tray. I think that should work. It's on broil, and we'll see. I guess the proof is in the pudding, I guess, as they say. Well, as they say, the proof is in the pudding, which is actually not the whole or the correct saying. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. That was the original. And it meant that, you can't tell how something will turn out until it's taken out of the oven, until it's tasted, until it's done. Now, just a note here, the original pudding referenced in this saying was not chocolate or my favorite, tapioca. Pudding in good old merry old England, where this phrase comes from, it was a dish made of all sorts of animal parts. And unfortunately, back in the day, you didn't know if your dish would necessarily taste good, or in the very least, if it would kill you, until regrettably after you ate it. Thus, the proof is in the pudding acknowledges our uncertainty of how things will turn out, and our hope that it will turn out for the better and for the good. Which is basically how we can look at our first reading for today. The prophet Jeremiah responds to the prophet Hananiah in that way. You see, Jeremiah and Hananiah were both prophets, and they had two very different messages. They both looked at the world around them, they looked at the politics and the things going on in the different countries, the geopolitical realities, and they came up with two very different prognoses, two different words of the Lord. Jeremiah preached that it was God's will for Jerusalem, its king, and the people to submit to the yoke, the power, the control of the foreigner king Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. Hananiah, on the other hand, proclaimed that it was God's will that in a mere 2 years, the yoke of their oppressors would be broken, and the people who had already been taken into exile in Babylon, they would be returned, as well as the holy and the sacred items that were taken from the temple. Those would be returned to the temple in Jerusalem. Hananiah declared a message of peace and prosperity. And as Jeremiah said, may it be so. And when it comes true, then we'll know that that word was from God. Jeremiah basically said, the proof of the preaching was in the pudding. But in the meantime, I think that's where we spend a lot of our time waiting, wondering, uncertain, hoping. Now, I'm pretty sure that in the past, I've preached for and about our need to get comfortable with this uncertainty. But I've come to realize that getting comfortable in the meantime is not quite true to God's word for us. I guess it's because getting comfortable, at least for me, denotes snuggling up in a blanket with a warm cup of coffee on a cold morning, or on a sunny summer day, sitting in the shade, sipping a nice cold drink. Getting comfortable could lend itself to self-satisfaction and complacency. So perhaps acceptance of being in the meantime is, well, more acceptable. Living in the meantime for Jeremiah and for us actually should be something we're quite good at. Church, we've been living in the meantime for a long time. We should be good at it. And it is embracing the truth, really, that we've never arrived. We're not ever done. We aren't complete. And acceptance of in the meantime means embracing adaptability, embracing uncertainty, being flexible. It is not expecting and judging ourselves by stability, self-sufficiency, or safety as marks of success. No, living in the meantime calls for adaptability and fierce faithfulness in God that is not dependent on everything turning out all right, not dependent on the news, on the realities of peace, but on the promise. Now, of course, I would hope that this is evident, that in these days, with our ongoing pandemic, as it is wearing on, and we are by no means at the tail end, and in fact, it frankly looks like it's already taking a turn for the worst, we cannot and should not be worshiping in person indoors. So in the meantime, are we closed? No. Are we worshiping? Yes. It is very different from what we're used to, and it will be different when we eventually transition back to in-person. But we are the church, and you are doing so much more. We are praying. We are reaching out to one another and others. We are speaking and marching, reading. We are organizing. We are feeding, and we are being fed. The uncertainty of this future has not paralyzed us. Personally as well, I think we all have, when we think about it, good practice of living in the meantime. You have no idea how many days, weeks, months, or years that you have left, that I have left. I have no idea really what may be ahead of me. I've never arrived. I hope you're not done. I am not done yet. So we face each day in the meantime, not with complacency and not just seeking our own comfort, but with spirits of love and compassion, spirits living hopefully in the now, not just waiting for what comes next. So, yeah, the proof is in the pudding, but in the meantime, life life is lived in the loving. Amen.